I'm not setting a place for you at the wedding, so this is goodbye. Right after landing at the airport, Harper, my sister-in-law, said this with a triumphant laugh. Today was Harper's wedding day in South Korea. I had come all the way to Korea with my husband and in-laws, but Harper's words were directed solely at me. What do you mean by that? I asked shaken, to which Harper replied bluntly, Why would I invite you to the ceremony? I didn't even book a hotel for you. Why don't you sleep outside or just go back home? My name is Ava. I'm 30 years old and I've been married to Joseph, who is the same age for a year. We met at a social drinking event after becoming working adults, hit it off, and soon started dating. We had our share of fights during our relationship, but my love for Joseph never waned, and I happily nodded yes when he proposed. After marrying, I started living with Joseph and his parents in their house. However, as soon as we started living together, I began to be treated horribly by Joseph and my in-laws. First off, I discovered that Joseph held male chauvinistic views. I had felt demeaned by him even when we were dating, which often led to arguments, but living together, he stopped hiding his true nature. Hey, have you finished the chores? What are you lazing around for? It's a wife's job to take care of her husband and his family. Get to it. He'd often yell at me. Although he had chauvinistic views, he seemed to care about his family, treating his mother, Rachel, and his older sister Harper equally. The in-laws too looked at me coldly. Especially Rachel's bullying was severe. She's a housewife, but ever since I moved in, I've never seen her do any housework. She seemed opposed to our marriage from the start and constantly made snide remarks at me. Initially, it was just about the chores, but then she started complaining about my job too. You know, if you have time to work outside, why don't you do some housework? You should quit that hobby-like job that doesn't even bring in a decent income. Led by Rachel, the in-laws always said I should spend more time on housework than working outside. But I do my share of the chores diligently. I suspect Rachel knows this and just looks for excuses to criticize me. Really? What's so fun about being a piano teacher? It was clear from her attitude that she disliked even my job. I've been working as a piano teacher at a music school since graduating from university. The school is managed by someone else, and I'm an employee there. I've loved playing the piano since I was young and went to a music college. I once aspired to be a pianist, but realized early on that I lacked the talent, so I took my current job on the recommendation of a college professor. I love the atmosphere at the piano school and have built good relationships with students and their families. I enjoy teaching piano to children and feel more relaxed at work than at home. While we were dating, Joseph admired and supported my job, but that admiration is nowhere to be seen now. Despite the constant pressure from my in-laws and Joseph to quit, I dream of opening my piano school in the future and have no plans to become a housewife. Harper too seems to dislike my presence, always looking at me with disdain. Why would someone like you marry Joseph? You should just divorce him. But then we lose someone to do the chores, which would be troublesome. That's a typical taunt from Harper. She works at a company, and using her busy schedule as an excuse, does no housework. Now that I'm living with them, she has even started dumping all her laundry and room cleaning on me. John, my father-in-law, rarely complains directly, but he seems to enjoy watching Rachel and Harper bully me. Because of this toxic environment, I don't feel like I belong in this house, and am seriously considering divorcing Joseph. Then, one day, Harper's wedding was announced. I wasn't surprised to hear that Harper might be getting married soon, as I'd been hearing about it daily, but I was taken aback that her fiancé was wealthy, and they planned to have the wedding abroad. The location was South Korea. So it was decided that we as a family would travel to Korea. Korea, huh? I've never been there. This should be exciting. Rachel was thrilled. Joseph and John were also excited about the trip to Korea, and Harper seems proud. However, I wasn't too keen on the idea. I had never traveled with the in-laws before, but I could already imagine how they would treat me. Still, there was one thing about this ceremony I was looking forward to. So I tried not to think too much about the in-laws or Joseph, and decided to attend the wedding with a positive attitude. On the day of departure, I was unsurprisingly made the in-laws' baggage handler. On the plane, while the in-laws and Joseph chatted happily, I was left out, feeling uncomfortable all the way to Korea. We had taken a night flight, so it was just before noon when we landed. The fresh air of a new place lifted my spirits as I stepped off the plane, but right after collecting our luggage, Harper hit me with something I never saw coming. "Thanks for handling the luggage. I didn't set a place for you at the wedding, so this is goodbye." I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing at first. Harper was laughing triumphantly, and the in-laws and Joseph were looking at me with disdainful smiles. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, flustered. "Why would I invite someone like you to the ceremony? I didn't even book a hotel for you," Harper then said. I was so shocked that I couldn't speak. Joseph and the in-laws started laughing. As I bit my lip in frustration, Harper continued, "You wouldn't fit in at a fancy hotel anyway. Sleep on the streets if you don't like it, or just go back." She said this with a dismissive laugh, and I started to tear up, remembering all the awful treatment I'd received from them. How could such injustice be allowed? Neither the in-laws nor Joseph defended me, just laughed as if they wanted me to leave quickly. I felt utterly alone. Reaching my limit, I made a decision and told the in-laws, "All right, I'll go back." The in-laws and Joseph burst into loud laughter, echoing through the airport. "Oh, good riddance. It feels refreshing without the dead weight," Rachel said. "Yeah, you better go back and do some chores," John joined in. Joseph mocked. "Get going! And of course, you're paying for your own return flight." After that, they took their luggage and left me at the airport. Fuming, I watched the retreating figures. Luckily, I found a flight back to America with available seats for today, and quickly made the arrangements to return home. After getting back, I went to get divorce papers, and spent my time tidying up and doing chores while on leave from work. I decided to relax alone while the in-laws were away. The in-laws' house, which I usually dreaded returning to, felt comfortable in their absence. A few days later, Joseph and the in-laws returned home. As soon as they opened the door, "Hey Ava, what the hell have you done?" Joseph yelled. I, playing with my mobile phone in the living room, just shrugged secretly. Their loud footsteps approached, and Joseph, the in-laws, and Harper appeared, all furious. "Welcome back. What's wrong? Did something happen?" I put down my phone and asked innocently. Then Rachel came at me. "Don't play dumb. You took our passports back home with you. What were you thinking?" Yelling. But I just smiled. "When you told me to go back, you didn't ask for your passports. I thought you didn't need them," and said. Actually, I had been tasked with keeping their passports safe when we were heading to Korea. I had kept them in my bag along with other valuables, and it seemed they had completely forgotten about it. "You did that on purpose, didn't you? Do you have any idea how much trouble we went through because of that?" Joseph turned red with anger and yelled at me. It was the day before returning home that he realized he didn't have his passport, and he had to rush to the embassy to get a travel document issued for his return. Then Joseph and the in-laws started talking about the terrible time they had after I returned home. This was 3 hours after they left me at the airport. Before the wedding began, Joseph and his group headed to the hotel in South Korea, where they were planning to stay, only to realize at the front desk that none of them had any money. Joseph had intended to make me pay, so he didn't bring any cash, and his credit card was maxed out at that point, so they couldn't pay for the upscale hotel. They tried borrowing money from the in-laws, but they too had assumed their son or daughter would cover their travel expenses and had no cash on hand. Panicking, Harper, who had arrived at the hotel earlier, decided to rely on her fiancé and his family. Descending to the front desk, Harper deeply apologized to her fiancé and his dad. "Please, Thomas, there's been a little mix-up, and my family's in trouble. Could you lend us some money?" Thomas, Harper's fiancé, cast a puzzled look at the apologizing Harper and Joseph's group. An uneasy tension began to brew between the in-laws and Thomas's family, and before Harper could explain, Thomas spoke up. However, what Thomas said was completely unexpected. "I've been wondering, why isn't Ava here?" "Ava? Who's Ava?" Harper and the others were confused. Thomas continued, "Ava is Layla's piano teacher. She's your sister-in-law, right, Harper?" She replied she would attend the ceremony, so why isn't she here? He said as he approached Harper. Layla is Thomas's 6-year-old daughter. As it turns out, Thomas has a history of divorce and a daughter, and she is one of my piano students. Layla started attending piano lessons this year, and I'm currently teaching her twice a week. So I already knew Thomas. Harper, Joseph, and the in-laws, learning this fact for the first time, were shocked and at a loss for words. "So it's like that. I didn't know." "Well, she fell ill suddenly and couldn't come." Harper stammered an excuse, but Thomas and his dad looked at her suspiciously. At that time, Layla was waiting in the hotel room with Thomas's mom. Thomas doubting Harper's words. "That's strange. I didn't get any message about that. I'm quite close with Ava. She would have informed me if she couldn't make it," muttered. Then Harper, starting to panic. "She must have been too sick to contact anyone. But please, Thomas, my family can't stay at the hotel without your help. Could you lend us some money?" Changed the subject. Joseph and the in-laws also desperately pleaded with Thomas. After consulting with his dad, Thomas said, "You're hiding something about Ava. Tell me the truth and I'll lend your family the money." So Harper and Joseph reluctantly began to explain. Thomas and his dad were obviously upset about hearing the full story, but it was too late to cancel the wedding. With 3 cash-strapped people, the only solution was for Joseph and the in-laws to use their wedding gifts to cover the travel expenses. However, even though the wedding went on, the atmosphere remained tense, and Joseph's group had a very uncomfortable time in South Korea. "Why did you keep quiet about Thomas and his daughter?" Harper, trembling with anger, confronted me. "How could you embarrass us like this? This happened because you hid the fact that you knew Thomas and his family." Shouting in a high-pitched voice, Harper accused me. It was a surprise planned by Layla. This time, Layla was scheduled to play the piano at the reception, and I had been asked by Thomas and his family to teach her the piece she would play. That's how I first found out that Harper's fiancé was Thomas. However, if I told Harper that I knew Thomas, it might spoil the surprise. So, I kept it a secret from Harper and Joseph. Upon hearing this, Harper began to tremble and lashed out at me. "Don't joke with me. What if your actions cause a divorce? I was looked down upon by his family throughout the ceremony." Then, "If he mentions divorce, I'll never forgive you. This is my chance to marry into wealth," she screamed further. "Did you marry Thomas for his money?" I asked calmly. Emotionally charged, Harper started spilling her own schemes even though I hadn't asked. She had always desired to marry a wealthy man, but never found the right match. Attending parties, she couldn't find a good match due to her high standards. So Harper began targeting men who were rich but had a history of divorce or children. She started dating Thomas and managed to marry him. Knowing her true nature, I guess she must have hidden it well from Thomas. If I ask for a little money, he immediately gives it to me. Where else can you find such a good man? Or should I say, a good wallet? I wouldn't have chosen a man with a history of divorce otherwise, Harper said defiantly. It was clear she loved Thomas's money, not Thomas himself. Anger boiled inside me, but I managed to ask, "What about Layla? Thomas said she's very fond of you. She practiced piano hard to surprise you at the wedding. Don't you have any affection for her?" Harper scoffed. "Of course not. It's easier to live with them if the child likes me. But let me be clear, I never intended to become a mother to that child." Harper revealed her contempt for Thomas and his family, showing no interest in Layla. Despite Layla's effort to surprise Harper with her piano practice, Harper mocked her. I reached my limit of anger, shook off Harper's hand, and showed her my mobile phone. "What? What is this?" Ignoring Harper's puzzled look, I spoke into the mobile phone. "Thomas, did you hear that? Your wife doesn't love you or Layla at all." Harper's face turned pale. "What? You can't be serious." Actually, my mobile phone was on a call and in speaker mode. The call was with Thomas, who had been listening to the entire conversation. "Wait, since when?" "Since you all returned home," I replied. Harper was speechless, and Joseph and the in-laws were also flustered. "Thank you, Ava. That's enough." Thomas's voice came from the phone. "Thomas, it's not what it seems. Harper, sweating profusely, started to make excuses. But Thomas sighed deeply and replied in disappointment. "That's enough. I know you were only after my wallet and have no love for Layla. I'm disillusioned. I can't live with you anymore." And then Thomas demanded a divorce. "I'll make sure to tell my parents about this incident. You don't need to come back to this house anymore. Neither you nor your parents should ever involve themselves with us again." Thomas said firmly, then thanked me and ended the call. I shrugged my shoulders and put the mobile phone in my pocket. Looking at Harper, she muttered in disbelief, "My money," and collapsed on the floor. Prioritizing money even in such a time, I was beyond words. Turning away from a dejected Harper, I glared at Joseph. "I'm divorcing you too. I've already got the divorce papers and I've signed them. I've packed my things while you were away and plan to leave immediately. I'm not going to continue being a servant for you." Reacting first to my words was Rachel. "Wait a minute. Who's going to do the housework if you leave? I won't allow a divorce just because it suits you." "That's right. What are you defying me for? You should just do as I say. That's what a wife is supposed to do." Rachel and then Joseph raised their voices, unleashing the frustrations I had been holding back. I took a deep breath and shouted, "All you ever think about is yourselves. I'm telling you I won't be used by you anymore. Just share the housework or something. Being a wife doesn't mean being a slave." Seeing me raise my voice like this for the first time, Joseph and the in-laws looked shocked. They must have never dreamed that the obedient me would rebel. Ignoring the stunned in-laws, I thrust the divorce papers at Joseph and left the house that day. My divorce from Joseph was finalized around the same time as Harper's. The in-laws, who had boasted about their daughter marrying a wealthy man, were now facing scorn and discomfort from neighbors after the quick divorce. Joseph, after our divorce, hurried to find a new wife, but kept being rejected at parties due to his male chauvinism. Meanwhile, I focused on my piano teaching, gaining popularity, and finally opening my own studio. I'm living a fulfilling life teaching piano to children, currently renting a space, but hoping to buy a house and open a studio there in the future. I also keep in touch with Thomas and Layla. Thomas, disillusioned by women after this incident, has no plans to remarry, and is committed to raising Layla with his parents' help. Layla is attending my piano classes and is working hard. As for me, I'm not thinking about remarriage. I plan to cherish my relationships with those around me and live a fulfilling life.